Good morning, everyone. Please take your seats as day 2 of our conference is just about to begin. Thank you. Now, please welcome this morning's MC to the stage, Texas State Senator, U.S. Navy veteran, and NALEO board member, Cesar Blanco.
Buenos dias. How we doing? Everyone recovering from last night's party? What a great event. Ladies and gentlemen, and esteemed guests and valued participants, welcome to day 2 of NALEO's 41st annual conference here in fabulous Las Vegas. Speaking on behalf of the NALEO and NALEO Educational Fund Board of Directors, we're so deeply honored to have each and every single one of you join us today as we discuss the issues that are most meaningful to our communities. I'm so proud to come together with more than 1,000 Latino leaders working side by side toward a brighter future for generations to come. And I'm so honored to stand before you to celebrate how far we've come, to acknowledge the significance of Juneteenth, which is celebrated today. The federal Juneteenth holiday marks the same date in 1865 when Union generals and troops arrived in my home state of Texas to inform enslaved African Americans of their emancipation. In our own Latino community, which includes millions of Latinos of African descent, Juneteenth is a particularly important day to commemorate. The legacy of the Atlantic slave trade extended from North America to South America, and with the abolition of slavery happening throughout the Americas in the 19th century, the United States was one of the last countries to do so. The legacy of slavery and its effects on communities continued throughout history. Still, despite this reality and history, Black people in America, including Afro-Latinos, have demonstrated a level of resilience, of perseverance, and strength that should inspire every single American. As Latinos, we have the duty and we have got the responsibility to help one another. And we are an ethnically and racially diverse people with as many shared experiences as our different experiences. And with Juneteenth remembering the struggle, remembering the sacrifice and the fortitude of Black Americans, let us honor the enduring pursuit of freedom, justice, and equality by our brothers and our sisters in the Black community, many of whom are Latino. Today reminds us to honor our shared history, admire our differences, and continue building bridges between our communities as we work together toward a more inclusive and a more equitable society. So, as you go about your day today, I want to encourage you to keep in mind the lessons of Juneteenth. As policymakers, let's continue our work with one another to create a society that works for all of us. Now, I'd like to thank this morning's National Leadership Breakfast sponsor, Starbucks, for helping advance our mission of facilitating the full participation of Latinos in the American political process. And here this morning to make remarks on their behalf is Mr. Arthur Les, Starbucks Executive Vice President of Supply Chain. Please give him a big round of applause.
Buenos días y bienvenidos. ¿Cómo están? ¿Todos bien? Thank you for the invitation to come. Starbucks is very happy to be here today and be a part of this. This is my first NALEO event, so I'm really looking forward to meeting with some of the officials today and getting to know more about the program and what you all stand for. Very excited to also share a little bit about my background. So my role is at Starbucks as I am EVP of Global Supply Chain and Customer Solutions. which means that all those Starbucks that you go into, they got to make sure they have all the products that you want to order, and they got to make sure that the processes that are in place to serve are there for you. So, and by the way, how many of you are Starbucks customers? Yes. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Well, I'm a new person to Starbucks, and the reason I made that decision, which is alignment, I think, with what you all are standing for today, is how we think about our community and our people and the way that Starbucks thinks about their partners. And the partners at Starbucks are very important to the culture and what we do, and it's a very important piece for me to also be proud of the number of Latinos. 30% of our workforce are Latino Hispanics within Starbucks, which is a fantastic figure and growing. And with that, we have a program that I'm very proud of as well internally, which is continued and furthering education, or first-generation education in most cases. We sponsor 13,000 graduates from Arizona State University, have recently gone through our online program, and our partners are the ones that are doing this, which is fantastic, and giving them the opportunity. And of that, 30% of those students that are out there today, which are 25,000 students enrolled, are Latino Hispanic, which is fantastic, all right? So I'll end with that, and thank you all for what you're doing and support and understanding what we're trying to get done here. I'm very excited to learn more, and thank you for being Starbucks customers. Have a good day. Thank you.
Thank you again to Mr. Arthur Valdez and our National Leadership Breakfast sponsor, Starbucks. We couldn't do our work without your generous support, so thank you very much. Up next, please help me welcome local board member of the U.S. Selective Service System, California, and NALEO board member, Ron Garcia, to update us on the changes in the NALEO and NALEO Educational Fund Board of Directors.
Good morning, folks. As on occasion, some of our speakers have used the point of privilege. I'm going to just take 30 seconds, staff, so it's fine. I'm particularly honored to be here today because I have a special person that is here, and she is with the leadership team of, what's the company again? State Farm Insurance. She's my niece, she's my goddaughter. Before you applaud, we're just going to ask, I missed her birthday last week, so I'm going to ask her to stand up. The Nino can't miss the birthday of their godchild. She was my first godchild. All I want is just happy birthday, Lisa, okay? 1, 2, 3. Okay, I have appropriately embarrassed her. Thank you so much. NALEO and the NALEO Educational Fund are governed by separate and distinct boards of directors. These boards play a crucial role in shaping the vision and future of our organizations, ensuring we maintain as the nation's leading nonpartisan, nonprofit organization that facilitate the full participation of Latinos in the American political process. So this morning, on behalf of both boards of directors, I'd like to take a few minutes to welcome our newest cohort of board nominees and say goodbye to those who have completed their terms. Please hold all your applause until the end so we can acknowledge these board changes together in one grand fashion. I would like to thank the following NALEO board members who are completing their board service. City of Pico Rivera, California, Councilmember Gustavo Camacho. Former Minnesota State Senator Melissa Lopez Franzen. Hudson, New Jersey County Clerk and NALEO President for 2023-24, Junior Maldonado. Latinos don't listen. One big one at the end. Unless you're a family member, the wives and the husbands can, so that's our exception. Texas State Representative Armando Martinez. Albuquerque, New Mexico, Public Schools Board member, Peggy L. Mueller Aragon. Orange, California, United School Unified School District Board of Education Vice President John Ortega. New York State Senator and NALEO First Vice President Jose Gustavo Rivera. And Florida State Senator Ana Maria Rodriguez. Additionally, the two NALEO Education Fund Board members who are completing their service are State Farm Assistant Vice President, Counsel, and NALEO. I think it's appropriate for you to applaud for the State Farm table. NALEO Education Fund Secretary for 2015-2023, Michelle Mancias. And former Rhode Island State Representative Carlos Tovan. To all our departing NALEO and NALEO Education Fund Board members, your contributions will always be part of the NALEO family. Pause. Some of them got that? No? Next, I am delighted to announce the committee's nomination of the following board members for their second term. We have 2 terms, 3-year terms. This will be their second term. New Mexico Commission of Public Records member Brian Colon. Monterey County, California Supervisor Christopher Lopez. Phoenix, Arizona Union High School District Board member Stephanie Parra. Waterford, Michigan School District Board Trustee John Paul Torres. Miami-Dade, Florida Expressway Authority Board member Luz Weinberg. And the City of Chicago, Illinois, Alderman Gilbert Villegas. To fill the vacancies left by our departing board members, the committee issued a call for nominations and received many excellent, 33 actually, nominees. I am pleased to present the following nominees for election to the NALEO board for the class of 2027 first term. California State Senator Bob Archuleta. Illinois State Senator Cristina Castro. Harris County, Texas Commissioner Adrian Garcia. The Village of Cuesta, New Mexico Mayor John Ortega. Linwood, California Unified School District Board member Julian del Real Carillos. And City of Hawthorne, California Mayor Alex Vargas. No relation to Arturo. The following leaders were elected during the past year to the NALEO Education Fund Board. California State Assembly, Lisa Calderon. Canutillo, Texas Independent School District Board Trustee Armando Rodriguez. And State Farm Legislative and Regulatory Counsel Paula Lutz. And finally, on behalf of the committee, I am delegated to announce the NALEO board officers for the 2024-25 term. They will begin their term tomorrow. As President, City of Downey, California Council Member Claudia M. Formenta. As First Vice President, New Mexico Commission of Public Records Member Brian Colon. As Vice President, Coconino County, Arizona, Treasurer Sarah Benatar. As Secretary, Texas State Senator Cesar Al Blanco. And as Treasurer, Miami-Dade, Florida County Commissioner Rene Garcia. We always have to at least 3 or 4 Garcias on the board at all times. I would also like to announce a new NALEO Education Fund Board Officer for the 2024 term. As Secretary, Texas State Representative Mary Gonzalez. To all our new NALEO and NALEO Education Fund Board members, we appreciate the work you've done and look forward to the work you will continue to do. And with that, congratulations to all the nominees. We are confident that the organization will be in great hands with the new and continuing leadership this coming year. Let's all give them, all the nominees and current board members, another big round of applause. Oh, I'm leaving.
All right. Well, thank you, Board Member Garcia, for that presentation and for all that you do. Thanks to all of our departing and incoming board members. Over the past year, our nation has lost giants in the field of public service. And we are blessed to have had the benefit of their leadership when they served as members of the NALEO Board of Directors. Please join me in a moment of silence as we remember NALEO board members who we recently lost. Thank you. In remembering those who are no longer with us, I'd like to take the opportunity to appreciate the everyday sacrifices of those around us. To lead us in a salute to all of our service members, please help me welcome the NALEO President and fellow NALEO board members to the stage. U.S. Navy veteran, the Honorable E. Junior Maldonado, Hudson County Clerk, New Jersey, and NALEO President. U.S. Navy veteran, the Honorable Ron Garcia, local board member, U.S. Selective Service System, California. U.S. Army veteran, the Honorable Hector Gutierrez, City of Forest Park, Georgia, council member. U.S. Army veteran, the Honorable Eric Cervellon, former Nebraska Learning Community Council member. And U.S. Marine veteran, the Honorable Gilbert Villegas, City of Chicago, Illinois, Alderman. We began this NALEO annual conference tradition back in 2014 when we gathered that year in San Diego, California. At every conference since, we take a moment to recognize the service, to recognize the sacrifice of our American heroes who have served and who are currently serving. So I'm honored to lead you in this tribute today. Of course, we know that behind every veteran's sacrifice is a family member who also makes that sacrifice on their own. So at this time, I'd like to recognize all the Gold Star families in the room and the families of fallen service members who have died while serving our country during a time of conflict. To our Gold Star family members, if you're able to, please stand. Let's give them a round of applause. We would also like to recognize the Blue Star families in the room. These are the families of service members who are serving our country during a time of conflict. We want to thank you for your service and your dedication to our nation. To our Blue Star family members, if you're able to stand, please do so. And let's also give these families a round of applause as well. During the Armed Forces Medley, which is a collection of the official anthems of the 6 military uniformed services of the United States, we'd like to ask all our veterans, our active duty military service members, and their immediate family members who are able to stand and to be recognized as the anthem of the military branch in which you serve or have served is played.
United States Army. the United States Navy. United States Air Force. United States Space Force. United States Coast Guard.
Thank you, board members, for joining us on stage. And let's hear it for the board members. And thank you all for your service to our great nation. That concludes our National Leadership Breakfast Program. Thank you and enjoy the morning. Oh, I'm sorry. And now I'm pleased to welcome to the stage this morning's plenary moderator, the Honorable Ana Tovar, Commissioner of Arizona Corporation Commission, who will lead our panelists in discussing charting a path forward, working through America's political divide. This plenary will examine our nation's shifting toward hyper-partisanship across political parties, public officials, and communities throughout the country. A practice that counters the core values of democracy and explore best practices to address this extreme division in public square. Thank you for leading us in this discussion, Commissioner Tovar.
You guys did such a hard job.
Well, good morning, everyone. It's great to be here on this second day of NALEO's 41st Annual Conference. Did you guys have a good first day? Orale, we had a good time. Can't wait for our second day. I'm pleased to be a part of today's plenary, charting a path forward, working through America's political divide. And boy, is this going to be a treat today for you this morning. As a national organization with a diverse constituency representing many political perspectives, weighing origins, gender, sexual orientation, and geographies. NALEO's Education Fund is proud of its ability to convene forums like the NALEO Annual Conference, facilitating critical and important to our Latino community while promoting civic public discourse. Unfortunately, our nation has seen a shift in recent years as hyper-partisanship takes a hold of political parties, public officials, and communities across the country, a practice that counters the core values of democracy and civility. This plenary will explore the effects of hyper-partisanship and Latino leaders and can address extreme divisions in the public square as we demonstrate their commitment to serving their constituencies and the American democracy. I know that each and every one of you here takes your role as elected and appointed officials very seriously. And I know we are in some very tough times in regards to dealing with our constituencies and, quite frankly, our colleagues, those on the same side of the aisle or the opposite side of the aisle. But I know that together we will get through this and ultimately represent our constituencies the best possible. Now, help me, I'm going to be introducing our two experts this morning, Ms. Summer Ali and Mr. Adam Brandon. Yes, let's give them a round of applause. We're gonna have so much fun this morning, guys. So Ms. Summer Ali is a research professor of the political science and law and the co-chair of the Project on Unity and American Democracy at Vanderbilt University, and the founder and chief executive officer of Millions of Conversations. Mr. Adam Brandon is the president of the Independent Center and the former president of Freedom Works. They both have extremely impressive resumes. So when you have a moment, please check out their bios on the conference mobile app. So I'm gonna get right into it. And please, if you can take I would say a couple minutes to introduce yourself. And Summer, can you maybe introduce yourself and give us about, some examples of your roles at Vanderbilt University and your work at Millions of Conversations.
Sure. So thank you, everyone. Again, it has been an absolute privilege to be with you here today and an honor, and I've really enjoyed getting to know what you're all about and your mission statement as well. And I feel like there's a lot of consistency in what we're all trying to do here, which is to strengthen that public square. And that's what I'm doing through my role both as an academician at Vanderbilt University, as a research professor of law and political science, who studies positive peace versus negative peace, and what positive peace is and how it can be realized through democracy and a commitment to nonviolent movement building work, both here at home in the United States and abroad. And then the organization that was mentioned that I started with a couple of other people about 8 years ago, called Millions of Conversations, which is where that's the application of some of my research, which is about bringing people together around common values for a shared future. And as our MC was saying this morning about creating a society that works for all of us, that's in essence what we're trying to do. And I will just say on that note, I really believe in exactly what's happening in this room right now and over these next 3 days, because it's not a silver bullet or a magic wand that's going to just be waved or resolve the divisiveness that we're all feeling. It's going to be activities like this one and thousands and ultimately millions of them happening around our country that's going to help us find smoother waters.
Thank you so much, Summer. We have our work cut out for you, but I'm thankful that you're here to help guide us as well, too. Mr. Adam Brandon, can you please introduce yourself and maybe give us some examples of your work at the Independent Center and your previous work at Freedom Works?
Sounds great. So first of all, when I was told I would be on a panel the morning in Vegas, I was looking forward to meeting all four of you. And I'm a little taken aback by the size of the crowd here. So
likewise.
Congratulations for everyone being up in Vegas. Thank you very much. So I just want to be, I just recently, after 20 years, stepped away and actually shut down my organization, Freedom Works, which worked on conservative grassroots issues. And the struggle for me, what I realized is that a lot of the values that I was trying to push we're really kind of getting just caught up in Team Red versus Team Blue. And a lot of what I've been talking about for 20 years and the values that I've been trying to, these classical liberal values, they're not really at home in the Republican Party. There's certain things that people in the Democratic Party I agree with, there's certain things in the Republican Party I agree with, yet I was forced to be on this Team Red system. So a month ago, my board and I made the very hard decision that it was time to close and time to move on. So I'm actually, for the first time since 16 years old, I'm unemployed, so Thanks for putting the unemployed person on your panel. But I am starting a new organization called the Independence Center. And what I look at, and I'd like to show you just a couple of slides very quickly. But as we get ready with these slides, I thought it was beautiful, the tribute to the armed services that you had here this morning. But what my concern is that we're heading to $55 trillion in debt in the next 10 years. I don't care if you're from Team Red or Team Blue, we're about to spend more on interest than we do national defense, and any of your priorities are about to be crowded out. We cannot, there is no Republican solution for our debt. There is no Democrat solution for our debt. We as a country, this is the time now, and I know it doesn't seem that way, but we have to find a way to come together to solve our problems. It's getting late. So I want to show a couple slides quickly that is actually pretty optimistic. This often shocks people. This is recent data from Gallup. You now see over 45% of Americans identify as independent, and the Republican and Democratic parties continue to into their death spiral. I wanted to understand who these independents were. Next slide, please. What you see happening, look at this, 2024, half the electorate is going to be millennials or Gen Z. And they are going to dominate American politics for the next 20 years. This election is the last election that is dominated by baby boomers and baby boomer politics. Change is coming, so if you like the current political situation, enjoy it, because it's not going to last that much longer. Next slide. When we start asking and getting into what's driving the switch to independent, you see it's younger people, and younger means under age 43 is what we're considering young right now. Me, Generation X, I'm 46, a little bit older, but you see on these charts, the independent bloc is growing and is going to continue to grow. Next slide, please. And when you ask why, this is one of the largest shifts you see. If you're over 50, your primary news source tends to be television. If you are under 50, you do not watch television in the United States. And that is fundamentally changing the way we talk to each other, the way we gather information, and when you look forward, where the conversations are going to be. Next slide. So I'll close with this. This is new data we just pulled from Maricopa County. I don't know if you realize, maybe you do, but Arizona may be the most pivotal state in the union right now in determining the House, the White House, and the Senate. But look at these numbers, folks. Look how they shift. You have right now 35% of Maricopa County, this is in 2022 and growing, is now independent. So the future of American politics is going to come through these independents and these younger folks. And what I am hoping, if you look at the Latino demographics in America, of course, they skew younger. And so that's a big portion of this rise of independence comes from 40-year-olds and below in this room and your kids and your families. And that, to me, is the big hope, is this new generation that's coming in actually has the power to shift this dynamic because they're not nearly as partisan as their predecessors.
Adam, you hit on some great parts. Your last slide right there, Maricopa County. So I ran statewide in 2020 during the pandemic, and absolutely correct on the data. I mean, we are a third in regards to our political landscape in Arizona. And I knew in order to make it and run successfully, get elected statewide, I had to reach out to all. And that's exactly what I did. I didn't take, one party or another. I didn't underestimate them. I treated them equally in making sure that it was outreaching to each and every one of them. And you're spot on in regards to our youth. I mean, they very much do not watch TV. I have a 29 and a 24-year-old, and yeah, it's all YouTube or TikTok or whatever it is, but yes, spot on that. We're gonna get into some questions now.
Can I ask the audience a question
absolutely.
real quick about something that Adam asked as well? He said, if you like the current political situation, it's not gonna last too long, so enjoy it while it lasts. Let me ask, how many of you all are enjoying the current political situation and climate in this country?
There's got to be one. Come on.
Okay.
No, I don't see one at all.
That's one thing we're in agreement about.
Yes, that is true. So for both of you, I'm going to ask the question you could answer. What are your thoughts on the current political divide and the hyper-partisanship that we see in our country today?
I think that there is a minority of people that are benefiting from it. And in my line of work, we call them conflict profiteers. So when you talk about TikTok, when you talk about YouTube, when you talk about X, when you talk about Facebook, when you talk about other platforms, Instagram, when you talk about people who are stirring the pot, if you will, always want to ask the question, who's benefiting from this and how? With how the algorithms are working as well. When you think about different advertising on television, and I think that you have to do this analysis, the complex analysis that I'm talking about, in part because there are so many different sources of information of which people are tapping into that they trust in order to decide what it is that what are they determine are the facts, for example. And so I think that this is creating this environment of echo chambers as well, and so many people are finding themselves in an echo chamber, not necessarily because they want to be there, but because that's how the sources of information that they're tapping into are working and are creating those rooms of which they're finding themselves in. So part of what's happening that we have to do is to figure out, do we first off ask questions? I think to deal with this current environment with curiosity and to say, am I in an echo chamber? If I am in an echo chamber, what kind of an echo chamber am I in? Only you can really answer that question. And then to determine, okay, do I want to remain in an echo chamber? If I don't, how do I break out of the echo chamber? What does that look like? What does that process look like? So let me give myself as an example, okay? Because of what I do, I'm watching so many different things. I'm on so many different channels, TV, as you are, I know as well, social media, print, and et cetera, like on different sides of the aisle, and globally as well. And what I find though is I get targeted by text messages by Republicans and by Democrats. So if something has happened politically, I will get a text message from Nancy Pelosi, and I will get a text message from Donald Trump. Mm-hmm. So I know I'm not in an echo chamber because I'm getting targeted by these echo chambers, and I might get 6 text messages, 3 from the Democratic side, 3 from the Republican side, and all these. And a lot of them also are ringing the alarm bells. There's like so much fear that's being used to try to get that pulse up as well, to get me to respond. And usually it's for me to respond to give some money as well. So when that's happening, I'm asking like, this is interesting. Who's benefiting from this? Where is this coming from? Where is the system behind this? How is this working? And then how many people know what's actually driving this and behind this? And so I think just to say this, I think we have to really think through like a 3-stage process here. One is, what is going on? Let's understand it. Who's benefiting from it? The second is, what am I going to do about it? And then the third is, what are we going to do about it?
Awesome. Thank you.
You stole a lot of my answers there, so I'm going to have to freestyle here a little bit. But what I think about when I look at a lot of the data, what pops off to me often is how the country really does agree on most of the big issues.
Yeah.
When you really start pressing people, even diehard Republicans and Democrats, whether it's immigration, whether it's wars, whether it's all these different issues, there's actually a lot more agreement. And so I think a lot of the problem, if you're in politics, is that you need that tension to help you raise money and to build up your activist base. But what happens is we're in this cycle of just it has to get more intense and more intense. And so again, this is what I was a victim of this in the sense that I wanted to talk about spending, but if everybody else is talking about stolen elections, how do you compete with that? So that looks at what's wrong with the incentives in our system right now, because the incentives, again, should be towards the center, because that's where we see where people truly are agreeing on. But I also believe that we have to be, when I look at America today, I think about my grandmother who was born in 1910. I remember as a little boy, she'd tell me stories of heating bricks up to put in the buggies as they would go around. And I flew on a jet here yesterday, and I've got the internet in my pocket. But my grandmother remembers a time when they had to heat bricks to stay warm in the winter. So the amount of change that is happening is just almost beyond human comprehension. So my grandma, in just in 3 generations, we've changed. So there's so much change that I think people often feel scared and lost in this change right now. And then they look for simple answers, conspiracy theories, or someone to tell them they're going to fix it, or we're going to go back to some glory era. But for this audience, for the job and the work that you're doing, you're facing that. You're facing people who are not necessarily benefiting from the changes that are happening, and they're angry. And so they don't know who you are, but you're probably part of the problem if you're on the other side of the table. And that's an incredible thing to ask of you to do that. And so my heart goes out to anyone, particularly anyone who's working in election cycles this year. It is kind of scary when you see some of the rhetoric. But just know the majority of the country supports what you're doing and just wants you to do your damn job. And that's what they ask you to do.
Yeah, and I think that's right.
Yes.
And I think people are looking for solutions.
Yes.
And they're looking for truth, and they're looking to figure out ways to reconcile with that truth. They want that authenticity. They want that transparency. And one of the reasons that you touched on conspiracy theories, but one of the reasons is because there's two key things that are pulsing through the veins of America right now I think that is causing a lot of anger. And that is people feeling that the system is hypocritical and the system is corrupt. So in dealing with those two things, if you deal with those two things effectively by first even acknowledging them, I think you'll begin to see like a groundswell of opening up that comes from just even centering around that acknowledgement.
Awesome. Thank you. Thank you both for your remarks. We're going to go in a little bit deeper on some other questions, but a couple of questions for you, Adam. Can you further describe the political realignments highlighted in your data that are happening across the country, especially across generations?
So what I see is you are living in a realignment. Every few generations, we have a political realignment. But normally, you look at a realignment, and you look at some of the last ones, Jimmy Carter was a Democrat from Georgia. Well, then you had the realignment, and a lot of Southern former Democrats became the new base of the Republican Party. That's an example of the realignment. You go back to FDR, that's an example of a political realignment. This realignment is different from anything we've ever seen before because what's happening is the next generation's realignment is to neither party. And this is not something that's going to slow down. This is a trend that's going to continue. So what you're seeing is that the Democratic base and the Republican base are going to get smaller and purer. And when I was young coming into Team Red, it was a pretty broad tent. There were a lot of different people in that tent, but that tent's getting really small now. And the Democratic Party's tent's getting a little smaller now. So what you have in this realignment that's going to dominate for the next 20 years in America is this unaligned center. And I think that's what's going to be fascinating because we've never had a realignment like this in American politics. It's possible this realignment could take down one of the two parties or both or fundamentally reform them forever.
Wow. Let's stay on this topic. What are some of the drivers of this realignment? Like, for example, social versus economic issues?
I saw a great data point from Gallup just yesterday. What they're showing is that younger Americans, and I mean younger, I'm talking millennials, and there's often this thought when you say millennials, people think they're like, where's my Starbucks over here? They're 22 years old and they work at Starbucks and live in their parents' basement. No, millennials are like 43 years old, they have children and just bought the house next door to you. So that's the young people right now. But I think what's happening is this post-Cold War era that we're entering. A lot of things that we thought were so sure that got us through the Cold War, we then had this kind of era of like being the superpower. Well, that era is now over. I saw yesterday that in the year 2000, 70% of the world's global reserves were in dollars, and now that's down to 55%. So what that's showing is there's a shift going on, not just in our country, but there's a shift going on globally. And I think younger Americans tend to be a little bit more in tune with that shift. But what they also understand is life is very, very complicated. And people are very, very, very complicated. And so simple answers don't work for these future challenges. And I think that's what's driving them away because often parties give you simple challenges. Vote for us, and there's going to be ice cream every day. Well, the younger person, I think, knows that there isn't going to be ice cream every day. And they are going to get the burdens of a lot of our failure to solve problems, which I think is immoral.
Thank you. We're going to go into a bit of social media.
Yeah. Oh, I just want to say, so what Gallup data said is that on social issues, the younger generations have pretty much coalesced around how they view the world. And on economic issues, they tend to be a little bit more center-right. And so that doesn't really fit with either party right now. And that's what's driving this move to the independents.
Thank you, Adam.
One of the reasons.
What is the impact of social media on the values of democracy and civility? And what are some tips for the policymakers here in the audience as they engage in the use of social media?
I think part of this, again, is the silos-based approach, which we need to be careful about not modeling if we want to solve the problem. And so I think there's a lot of attention right now on social media. There's a lot of attention on AI. There's a lot of attention on technology. There's a lot of attention on a lot of different things. And again, it kind of goes back to like, if we could just fix this, then everything would be okay. And the answer just really is it doesn't work that way. And I think we have to really take a holistic approach and understand, for example, the way that people with an addiction problem, not to note where we're sitting right now, but the city that everybody is, but it's just to say, if somebody has an addiction problem, what it means if they're on social media. And so is it the social media or is it the addiction issue that needs to be dealt with? Or how and what is, and whose responsibility is it? I think one of the issues that we're having too is answering the question on any type of issue or problem that we have, whose responsibility is it? We have an ownership of responsibility issue. And I think it's on every single level. If something's not working, whose responsibility is it? Sometimes you'll have everybody pointing this way. So nobody's taking ownership of that actual problem. As citizens, is it our responsibility to fix X? Is it our responsibility to fix the political system, or is it somebody else's responsibility? Is it our responsibility to decide how social media is going to work this next decade in our country? What are the laws and regulations around it, while making sure that we still have a functioning First Amendment that protects our freedom of speech and freedom of assembly and other rights like the Establishment Clause? Is that our responsibility, or is that Congress's responsibility? So how does that work exactly? As a lawyer, what I will say is what I have noted, this has been a conversation that's been happening for almost 20 years now, and that is the law and technology area. What are the laws that should govern and regulate technology and technological advancements? I had a lawyer who's a First Amendment lawyer one time argue to me a little over a year ago, that an algorithm has a First Amendment right. Does an algorithm, and then I was in a 15 to 20 minute conversation and debate with whether or not an algorithm has a First Amendment right. And so this is the level of conversation that we're having right now. And I think we need to answer that question, and then we need to move forward. We have Web 3.0 that's happening right now. Many people are still trying to catch up to understand Web 2.0, and many people are wanting to go back to Web 1.0, but we're going to Web 3.0. So we need to understand Web 3.0 right now, and what does that mean for democracy? What does a healthy, functioning democracy look like in a Web 3.0 system, ecosystem? Those are the types of conversations I think that we need to be having, and I think we're up for it. I think many people are daunted by it, but it's not as complicated as we might think. We can break it down, but I think it takes us going back to basics when we do so. And that requires us to say, what are our values and our principles? And then how do we apply those so that we get the democratic outcome that we want? And how do we recommit to democracy through that process?
Adam, anything to add?
Well, when I think about social media runs on divisiveness often, right? If you want clicks, it's like put something out more intense. And I think what we're missing is the opportunity to have a more human-based conversation. How many of you have kids? How many of you have grandkids?
Ooh, yeah.
All right. So a lot of us have a lot in common. I've got a 1 and a 3-year-old. You've got a 1 and a 3-year-old.
4, yeah.
4, okay. But a lot of the conversation, the challenge is, I was reading a Wall Street Journal article on the flight yesterday, and it was talking about some woman found that her daughter's Instagram page, 92% of her followers were adult men. And it's woo, I texted that to my wife, this is a serious conversation we're going to have about social media and how we raise our kids. But that should be something that unites us all, our future of our children. And I would like to think that as we can start to shift some of these conversations, that's what parents really care about. And I think a lot of the issues are manufactured by politics to try and keep us apart, and social media is just perfect for that.
Well, and I also just want to say, on the tips piece of it, because it's a really good part of the question there. And divisiveness, I'd also go and use this term demonization. So social media can be used as a way to demonize another person, another group. Right. And it's an effective tool to be able to do that. And that's what I was talking about, conflict profiteers as well. And disinformation is becoming an issue, not becoming an issue, it is an issue. And it is a global risk, and especially it's a challenge for democracy because it makes it very difficult for us to make informed decisions, which is really important in a democracy for people to be able to do if we don't know what's real from what's not real. So this is a challenge, but again, for every challenge I'm saying, yeah.
But I just wanted to build right on that.
Yeah, please.
Because how many of you saw the pictures last night of Putin and Kim Jong-un meeting in Pyongyang? And just a week before, you saw pictures of Putin meeting with Xi. And I guarantee you all of them are talking about ways they can exploit our differences and ramp up our differences in this country. So it's not just we're doing it to ourselves. We know our foreign adversaries are doing this to us too, and we're letting them do that, and that's what's really upsetting.
Oh, we're a target. There's no doubt about it. And that is, again, for many people, when they hear that, it's like you're going to have a fearful response to it. But you have agency. We have agency. This is, and again, going back to this piece here, it's the acknowledgement of what is happening, and then to say humans are smart. And people say like humans are dumb. No, actually, we are smart. And one of the things that we're going to be doing at Millions of Conversations in the fall is having opening up a conversationalist series on living life with robots. What does that look like? When we're talking about the loneliness epidemic, in part, that is coming from the way in which we're engaging with social media. So I think part of that is to have a conversation also around what does a healthy way to engage with social media look like? Sometimes people will say social media is the new smoking. It's not necessarily, I don't think it is the new smoking. It doesn't have to all be bad. Yes, you have to work harder if you're trying to get a positive message out there that's going to counter a negative message, but you can do it, and people will reward you for it. As Adam's slides are just showing, and as as our polls are showing, if you look at the data, people want solutions. They will reward those solutions. So I think we have to double down on our investment in each other as humans.
Yes.
Yeah, you're going to go
No,
ahead.
I'm just like, yes, you go.
Yeah, go ahead.
The one other phrase you used, I use the same phrase because I think it's so powerful, and this is my tip to navigate the social media world. Transparency is so important. I think too often the citizens see people who are involved in elected office and they look like they're so far away and so scary and so intimidating. This is an opportunity with social media to explain what you do and the challenges you face. And I think there's an opportunity. So, and authenticity is another word that I always tell my staff. If you're truthful with who you are and what you're trying to accomplish and what the challenges are, it humanizes you and the job you're trying to do.
So I think, as somebody who studies disinformation and who was the target of a disinformation attack before the word was even there, so just to kind of read you all in, I was, when I worked in the White House, and then I also worked for the state government of Tennessee, and in both of those positions, I was demonized and called a terrorist because of my background as an Arab American Muslim woman. And it was, and millions of people were buying into this conspiracy theory about me on unfounded, complete, just bogus, made up stuff. And that's when I saw the power of disinformation. And then I peeled back to see who was behind it and why they were behind it. And we identified the conflict profiteers. And a lot of things happened and flowed from there that allowed for us to shift the momentum away from the conflict profiteers and towards the truth. But what I will say in that moment, that campaign against me started in 2010. So I've been dealing with this for almost 15 years as both someone who's been targeted by it and then somebody who's also a professional expert in the space and in the area. I worked at Homeland Security, for example, as well, and so I was studying how people were self-radicalizing online and et cetera. And I can go on and on about those things, and I'm happy to talk more afterwards about it. But what I would just say here in connecting into what Adam is saying as well is about what you do in this environment is, first off, you recognize that we're dealing with an authorizing environment for cruelty and brutality. So how do we shift into an authorizing environment for collaboration and productivity? What does that look like? How do we do it online, and how do we do it offline, and how do we connect those two? There is no alternative reality. It is reality. So whatever someone's experiencing online, that has become their reality. And the minute they step out from behind the screen and they're engaging with someone who might have looked like they were doing something just online, they're going to have a reaction to that person that is in sync with their online reality. That is what we're dealing with. So my tips for you is to, one, truly think about how your social media and online posting habits look. What does that look like exactly? And in what you're receiving, how do you actually verify what it is that you're seeing? And how do you also pay attention to your reaction as you're getting it and as you're seeing it, even including like what the headlines are looking like? How do you know what you're seeing, how that is trusted information, and if your emotions are actually the appropriate emotions to it? And then I would just say, and kind of thinking through those things, is like diversify your different sources of information, because that will help the algorithms that are targeting you not continue to put you and place you in an echo chamber. And then I will just say, lastly on this, is to try to really post messages that kind of bring the temperature down for everybody, and then find ways to get other people in your community, the friends and family network. So our research has shown that the friends and family are the most trusted networks for people. Those are the people that are following you on social media. So you have power within that network, and so you have agency. And by using it, you can transform that environment that you're in.
I mean, you mentioned something that is absolutely great that you mentioned about this. I mean, I know many of us during COVID and even until now, I mean, it's very hyper-political, even on social, as you mentioned, in social media, but even within your own family and close network of friends as well, too. I, for example, during this time, during COVID, and even into this date, I mean, there is a divide with even our family members and with one of my sisters as well, too, in regards to her own personal beliefs and to my work as a, elected official as well, too. And, it come to a point where I definitely love her from afar. She will always be my sister. And we try to communicate on very common issues as well, too. And setting those boundaries are super important. But at the same time, realizing, like, we are sisters first and foremost. And yes, we can agree on or disagree on things, but let's not let this type of environment divide us and our family as well, too. So maybe if you're willing to share a raise of hands, how many of you have been in this similar situation as me as well, too? It is quite a bit of people here that are experiencing this, and imagine outside in our communities as well, too. So very important information that we're discussing today, and I'm thankful for both of you for providing these tips. I'm gonna ask you right now, for our policymakers in the audience, how should they think about how they engage conversations with whom they disagree with, and over the next few months, given our November election cycle, over the next couple of years, and for me, even on a daily, weekly, or monthly basis?
You want to go first?
Wow, there's so much to unpack with that.
Yeah.
Because it is, I am very optimistic about the future. I am very optimistic that this millennial generation shift is going to be very good for all of us as a country. But I am not blind to the fact that the next several months and the next several years might be very difficult for us. And I worry about, it's strenuous now. Imagine, let's throw in a terrorist attack. Let's throw in an economic crisis. Let's throw in something that is unknown, another invasion in some other country. And in this hypercharged environment, what is the effect of that going to be? And I'm very nervous about that. But that's where I look at why I was excited when I was invited here, is because you are all on the front lines based on the wide variety of jobs and experiences that you have. So I can up here and pontificate about it, but you're actually going to deal with it. And I just think the most important thing to remember in this is that I think the more you tell your story and what you're trying to do and explain that to the public, I think that just breaks down that barrier of the distance and helps take the temperature down. And when it comes to engaging with people, I often just remember, I'm all for trying to engage someone else, but there are people that just, my dad had a saying, to change a man against his will, he's of the same opinion still. There are just some people you can't engage with. And don't spend too much time with them. Because online, there may be someone following you and posting. That's one person. Other people are going to watch your reactions. So, and at some point, it's perfectly fine for you to say, sir, I have said what I need to say. I think we're just going to have an impasse here. It's, I think it's time for us to move on. Don't think you have to respond to everyone and everything. But I can't say enough about this. The more you humanize your job and your challenges, the more it's going to, I think, help take that temperature down.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think it's temperament. I mean, be thinking about what is your temperament? What is your current temperament? What do you want your temperament to be? What do you want to model? Again, what is being a responsible, this is a leadership conference. What does responsible leadership look like? What does it really, truly look like to model good leadership? And when do you get it wrong? And how do you admit when you get it wrong? I get it wrong sometimes, and my biggest thing is to admit when I do get it wrong and to model how to address a situation when I've gotten it wrong, and to lean into my humanness and that vulnerability, and also just to sort of I think recognize this moment that we're in. And I was saying the other day, it's like we're all back in high school. And everybody is having a lot of emotions and a lot of feelings and a lot of thoughts about different friends groups and who's doing what. The gossip rumor mill is running. Who knows if it's true, if it's not true. I grew up in a small town. If we didn't know it, we made it up. I mean, it's just sort of like that's the environment. And I kind of think like recognizing that we're in high school, we've forgotten some of the things that we learned in kindergarten. And we need to go back a little bit to kindergarten and go back to the basics and really think about boundaries. You mentioned it. What are healthy boundaries? How do we regulate our emotions? Like I'm thinking about my daughter yesterday. She was upset about something, and the reason I corrected about 4, because she'd be very upset if I didn't recognize that she turned 4 last month. And she was bawling, and I said, Aya, what's going on? She's like, I'm not ready to talk right now. I need a moment. And I just think like we're all there, and it's like sometimes we need a moment. And so I think it's recognizing when do we need the moment. And that includes when we're at that keyboard and we're going to respond to that email or that text message. When I've responded when I see that I've sent 10 texts in a row to somebody, it's time for me to step back and say, whoa, what am I doing? And what am I putting in writing? As well as a lawyer here, which I know better than this. Why am I getting animated? Maybe I should go for a walk. That is some self-regulation. Yeah.
Humor, if you can use it, very effective. It's a great way to de-escalate a scenario, but one thing, and I've learned this a million times, don't use sarcasm.
Yeah.
I'm still burying some things I said in sarcasm that got quoted, and it's like, if you took it in context. So don't say anything sarcastic. If you can be funny, it does help to take the temperature down. Even if it's a little thing like, well, I don't think we're, just someone's blasting at you for doing something, and you could just make a little offhanded thing like, I don't think we're gonna, we're getting coffee today or something. Just something small like that.
Yeah.
It just helps humanize and take the temperature.
Have some grace with yourself and with others too. I think that's grace is an important piece of that too. And just and to recognize that the person you might be thinking that you're on opposite sides of might become somebody that you end up working with. So Adam and I, for example, when we were in a room together with our good friend here, Arturo, and the first time meeting, I would say that most of the people in the room would have probably thought that we would be on opposite sides of almost everything, quite frankly. And we've ended up being good friends and working together in ways that are surprising that initial leadership cohort that we were in. And it's in part because we're focused on that destination. And that destination is how do we build a better America, a healthier society that works for all of us. And we're saying,
Could you repeat that? Because that is such a good phrase.
But seriously, and I think that we're saying like we actually have more in common than we disagree on. And so how do we work around that while we also recognize that our core values are in sync? And those values in part go to what was the MC again said at the beginning, which is freedom, justice, and equality. And it gets that recommitment to democracy and what is America about and what does it mean to belong in America today and what does our American identity mean now and moving forward and what do we want it to mean and what does global leadership look like? And I'll just connect it into this as well on the hyper-local piece as elected and political influencers and policymakers. The hyper-local matters. And that hyper-local and connecting it into the global matters too. In Tennessee, so I was the assistant commissioner for international development in the state government in Tennessee. And what I found was almost 1 in 2 jobs in Tennessee is dependent on foreign direct investment and trade. I think that's probably the case for almost every state in America. So what does that look like? How do we connect in to whatever it is we're doing at the hyper-local level into that international and global level so that we can, again, as a country, impact the world in as positive ways as possible?
Our time has flown by so fast. I'm going to end with this last question because I know that there's a lot of our school board members and our city council members that are out in the audience. Of course, many of our local elected officials are in nonpartisan offices, but they have to deal with very partisan or very divisive issues at their school board meetings or at their city council meetings. We'll end here with what advice or strategies would you give these policymakers to deal with these types of situations? I know each and every one of us have seen, a cut in the media of a school board, having these very divisive issues, and at our city council meetings as well.
Yeah, so Millions of Conversations, we have actually been asked to come in with some of those school boards that you've seen on TV and in the news and help them work through those and transcend those divides, and we've been thankfully successful. One of it is that we've asked everybody to take the pledge to listen, and you can find that on the Millions of Conversations website, and it's in part, it's this commitment. Again, it's like taking that pause, and it's committing to respectfully listening to each other while remaining as whole individuals. It's humanizing each other. It's also recognizing people's pain and their trauma, because when someone's acting out of character a lot of times, it's like to take a moment and not necessarily respond to their worst moment, but to understand why they're in their worst moment. Right. And then to kind of scratch that surface there, because that is going to be an illuminating moment for them as well. And then you go, again, I keep using that word process, but you take the school board and the community through a process that anchors around not only your values, but also that thing that a democracy requires, which is compromise. And again, and I think like the sequencing is important. You can't start in the middle of the most heated reason for the divide. You won't be able to resolve it. What you have to do is actually understand, recognize, listen, and then build around that solution as a pathway forward.
So I always, it's kind of, you take all my responses from me. But I think back, again, knowing this audience and what you're entrusted to do, I think back when I was a little kid playing football, my coaches would always say this: the other guy's going to be kicking you and kneeing you and spitting at you, but if you swing at him, that flag's coming at you. And how many times when you're playing sports, you had enough, and you take that swing, and then you see that flag go up, and it's like, and you're heading to the sideline, and the other person's laughing at you? Being an elected official, I think, is a lot like that, because you got to take the punches and the spit and everything else, because the minute that you push back or say something or lose your calm, there's a million phones out there, and they're going to make you. I understand how hard that is, but I think what I'd like to end with is just the more you take a deep breath, you lean into your job and try and explain, and try and maybe that person who's pushing back when you're on a school board. I've seen some of these school board meetings. Often the fights in the school board meeting have zero relevance to reality. And we're trying to figure out how to build a new gym, and we're talking about this. Try and bring them into that conversation, how we're going to pay for this new thing.
That's right.
There's other tangible issues. Engage with them and ask them that question, and see if you can start shifting the conversation to something that is like actually practical. But again, with the school board, this is an opportunity. So few people understand what a school board is. I think a good place is just starting off explaining what the heck a school board does.
What's our responsibility?
Absolutely. Well, thank you. Join me in please thanking our speakers, Ms. Ali and Mr. Brandon as well, too. It's a great morning conversation. I hope that we can take some of your suggestions, best practices, and we'll definitely practice and stay away from the chisme. I want to invite our Senator Cesar Blanco back to the podium because he's going to provide us with some final housekeeping announcements.
Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome to the stage Texas State Senator, U.S. Navy veteran, and Aleo board member Cesar Blanco.
Wow, what a great panel. Thank you again to our moderator, Commissioner Tovar, and to all our panelists. Let's give them another round of applause. Did a great job. I also want to take another moment to remember the NALEO board members we lost in the past year. The Honorable Maria Cali, the Honorable Gloria Molina, and the Honorable Bill Richardson. Thank you. Before we wrap up this morning, I want to highlight the breakfast sessions that are in store for you beginning at 10:30 a.m. These sessions are mental health in the aging Latino population, data-driven decisions leveraging AI for local government efficiency, recipes for success, the do's and the don'ts of working for Latino policymakers, and healthcare heroes navigating through the talent shortage in health services. So make sure you explore the conference app for more information, and before you head out to the breakout sessions, please participate in the NALEO Service Project benefiting the Just One Project. Stop by the Service Project booth to learn more about it. And finally, make sure you meet back here at 12:30 today for our National Leadership Luncheon in the afternoon plenary, addressing the humanitarian crisis at the border and beyond. Thank you to everyone. Enjoy day 2 of the NALEO 41st Annual Conference. Gracias.